Alright, you bastard, this is Some-Belgian-prepper, and today I'm going to talk about the rack. And before you wonder what a rack is, well, before we're going to talk about it and why it's important for your bug-out bag, if you're interested in survival courses in Belgium, there will be a link to my website called survivaltrainingbelgië.be and also to my book called Bloody Crosses. So if you're interested, I would say take a look. So, what's the difference between this handkerchief and this handkerchief? Well, it's kind of obvious. This one hasn't been washed in a very long time and this is a clean one. Simple. But it can be, the difference between those can be important for your bug out bag. The reason why I make this video about the rack is we all have a rack. You just didn't realize it, because I didn't realize it. I have my bug out bag, I've been using it for years, and there's always one item that I used and never mentioned and even not thought about it until I was self-aware of it, and that was the rack. And it's not only with my bug out bag, it's also at my job, with my work uniform, that I have a rack. So, finally to the point, what is a rack? The rack is just a piece of cloth that you use for everything that can be dirty, but you cannot use it for something that you need to have clean. So, for example, first of all, the rack is something that you're going to use on things that may get dirty. So we're talking about just the basics like wipe off snot, sweat and blood. I say snot because, yeah, if you're going to use an handkerchief to clean something that must be sterile, yeah, snot not allowed. If you're going to use it to filter water, because you can use a clean rack to gather water by rubbing it over wet grass or dew in the morning, and you wring it out in your water container or in your mouth, and you have clean water that you don't have to filter. But yeah, you cannot do this with a dirty rack. So that's the reason why sweat is also out of the option, because if you're going to wipe off sweat with the dirty rack, it gets salty, and you don't want salt in your drinking water. That's not good for the hydration. And of course blood. I'm not talking about blood that you have a dirty wound, that you have a wound and you're going with a dirty rag on top of the wound. I'm talking about when blood seeps off and you wipe it off. Another thing is, and this is the reason why how I got aware of it, because I'm going to make a video about this. This is a small iron cast pan, and whenever I cook it on a fire, on hot coals, or perhaps on I improvised camping stoves. I made a video about these too. Then the thing was is, if I had to put it back in my bug out bag, my bug out bag would get dirty. Of course, you can use a plastic bag to put it inside of it, but the problem is, even then, the soot would get on top of the pan. So before I put it even in the bag, I can rub it off most of the soot, and then I have less chance that the inside will be contaminated with soot. So yeah, that's one of the reasons that I got aware that I always been using a rack for several things. Another thing you can use it for is for wiping off soot off not only the pan, but if you have a stove like this that you're using, you can use it too. Or if you have just some utensils like this is from my canteen, and as you can see, it's very dirty with soot. So those are all things that you need to wipe off with it. Yeah, where was I? Another thing you can do is to keep your rifle safe. I thought it was a neighbor, but if you have a rifle and you don't want to get sand, dust, mud or snow inside of it, you can just take your rack, put it on top of it and knot it down, and that way your barrel will not get clogged while you're carrying it around and not using the rifle. So yeah, you don't want to get any big particles uh, stuffing into the barrel when you're going to use it. So that's another way you can use the rack. Another thing that you can do with it is keep your tools clean. For example, the tools that I talk about is usually a shovel. Whenever I'm done with shoveling, yeah, the problem is this could get caked with a lot of mud or wet ground or soil. So yeah, before you're putting it back into your, that's also the reason why I have one of these shovel bags to put it in. But yeah, before I do that, so to have not too much weight extra with the shovel, I can just clean it off of the shovel. And it's not only for the shovel, but it's also for if you, oh, excuse me, the other way around. It's also for when your boots, the other way around. When you have a boot, you want to to have that one clean too. There we go. Yeah, for cleaning your boots before you're going into your shelter or whatever, it's always nice to wipe the mud a little bit off. Another thing you can do is camouflage. So what you can do is you take a little bit of charcoal that you have from your campfire. You can put it inside of your rack, and then you can squash it up, and now you have enough coal powder to use as camouflage to put on your face for hunting or evasion during a bug out or whatever. And when you're done, you can just take the clean part of, you use the dirty part to put the camouflage on, and you use the perhaps better a wet, you make it wet and you wipe it off with the dirty rag, because like I said, you don't want coal on your clean handkerchief. So yeah, that's also another use you can have for it. Another thing I would say is, as a first step for improvised water filter, so if you got some muddy water, yeah, you can perhaps fold it up. You have 2 layers of cloth, pour the mud water on top of it, and that way you can use an improvised filter to get the most dirty particles out of it. Or if you use a filter like one of those purification tablets, that you at least get all of as much particles and mud or out of the water before you're putting it into your canteen, and then put a purification tablet inside of it. It works, how more clear the water, the better it will work. Another thing, extra cordage. If you need some cordage, for example, just one more cordage that you can use, you can twist it, but you can also rip parts of it. If you rip multiple cordages of it, you have much more cordage than you would have before. So that's another thing you can do. Another thing you can do is as an improvised tourniquet. So that is the reason why I said you also need a clean one, because if you have a wound and you want to put pressure on top of it, it's better to do it with a clean one than with a dirty rag, because you don't want your wound to get infected. But if the bleeding is not helping, the stopping of the bleeding is not helping, then you can use the dirty rag as an improvised tourniquet and start twisting it above the wound. So yeah, then there is less risk of infection. And yeah, another thing I would say is, if you're going to use something like grease or oil, that's also a good use to have a dirty rag with you, because yeah, we all know the mechanic can stereotype, but it's there for a reason, because those are things that even if you wash the rag, there will be still particles on top of, inside of it with chemicals, grease, oil, or that kind of stuff. Yeah, you don't want that, so that's why we need the rag. The last thing I would say is, this is just something that came up, that if you have, like, I'm going to make a video about this anyway, but if you have iron cast stove or a pot or whatever, that you can use the rag to grab the hot stove, because a lot of people, that is mostly for people who are hiking or doing a bug out, and they have gloves. But a lot of people, I always try to use gloves that are made of wool. So if I use a woolen glove to pick up a hot pan, yeah, there's not much to it. But if you're going to use gloves that are made out of synthetic materials, then by the heat of the stove, I mean by the pan or the pot, they can start to melt. So that's why you need a cotton rag to get it without too much damage to it. So that's another thing that you can do with it. If you have any other uses of the rag, please let me know in the comments. Always eager to learn new things. Like, subscribe, all the good stuff, and see you in the next video. Cheers!